So you want a story time about how I domed my demons, huh? Well, I guess it's only right. Welcome back to the Dom Your Demons podcast. My name is Midas MSL. I'm the host of this goddamn thing, and this is a channel where we learn in a variety of different ways how to take our darkness and make it our divine accomplice through the use of an esoteric approach to shadow work, which I call doming your demons. And there's a reason why I started this channel, and it wasn't necessarily deeply philanthropic. I want to tell you that at the heart of me, am actually a pretty selfish person. I actually, I'm not some bleeding heart charity giver, like I feel goodwill towards people on the street and I want everyone to feel included, but it's not like in life I walk around going like, I want to be of service to the world, my MO is not like I'm of service to you, but I have to tell you so honestly, so truthfully, that the calling to start this channel was stronger than my selfishness. I felt this very strong knowing that my path forward in life was to share the information about how I had such immense somatic blocks that it felt like they were lodged in my chest and like they were trying to tear a phone book through me, all the while yelling the words, I hate you, I fucking hate you. And I don't know if anyone else has ever experienced this before, but I want to tell you a bit of an origin story of how I think those demons, and when I say demons, I'm not talking about disincarnate beings. I'm sure those things exist. I mean, I'm super woo. I'm a metaphysician. By no means am I evangelical in evangelical Christian land at all. But I do believe that there are negative spirits, and I can tell you some pretty freaky stories about that as well sometime too. But when I talk about demons, what I'm referring to is your shadow, and when your shadow gets in the way of you doing and experiencing the things that you love. So that is really my overall definition for demons, is like when there is a block that's so immense that it gets in the way of you experiencing life the way that you want to. And I also want to preface that in me telling this story, this is not the trauma Olympics. I know there are people who have experienced much worse things than me, but for whatever reason, what I went through in life was enough. I think because I'm so sensitive. I'm such a sensitive, softy marshmallow that learned to become resilient, that learned to have an outer shell around me that's functional and that is for the good of my growth. But what I experienced was enough to break my heart and to make me feel like a shell of myself. And so the process of me coming back into the fullness of who I was a process of alchemy. While you're here right now, hit follow, hit subscribe. If this story resonates with you at all, I would love to hear a comment. If it didn't, I would also love to hear a comment because that'll get me engagement. So without giving you any backstory about my childhood, I'm just going to plop you right into the middle of my 20s, where I'm living in Denver and I am somewhat making it as a successful artist. And when I say successful, what I mean is the entire community was in support of me. I played at least one show a week. I was in multiple different bands. I was able to open for people like Andrew WK. I played Red Rocks. I was regularly crowd surfing. I was having a great time. And I was also in these other bands where I was singing backup. And there was just a huge air of collaboration and a spirit of community that at the time I didn't know how rare that was. The Denver music scene in my mid-20s was fucking nuts. It was amazing. For the most part, my life was great. I wasn't making a ton of money, but I just was so creatively fulfilled on a level of performance. I'm such a natural performer. I would say that the only things that were really going wrong in my life was the romantic partners I was choosing at the time were psychologically harmful, and that was completely on me. But generally, just as a person, I was like happy-go-lucky. I was audacious. I knew most everyone in town. I could get into any bar I wanted to. It just was a good life, you know? It was my own psychological darkness that got me into any trouble at the time. But for the most part, I was like living in a really nice fish tank. And all of the settings of the fish tank are just right, you know? It was almost like I was being fed external validation and I didn't realize just how much I was missing underneath, just how much of an unstable psychological foundation was sitting underneath all of that success. And so if anything were to take it away, my whole psychological foundation would crumble, because it was just the fact that the fish tank was set up so nicely that I was doing okay. But there was just something brewing underneath the surface, because I knew the way that I was brought up wasn't conducive to a person truly loving themselves. And this could totally be seen in the romantic partners I was attracting. It was like the doom that was about to face me was like pre-echoed in the partners I was attracting, because they were just so foul. They were like narcissists or abusive or lying or cheating or trying to do really horrible things in front of me. And I knew that something was off, but there just wasn't enough of like a crumble moment, of like a tower moment, to really take everything away from me, for me to really see and rebuild my psyche from the inside out, which came very quickly in the year of 2016. I've heard that for a lot of people in 2015 and 2016, it was like the Matrix just flipped on its head and everything started to get really weird. And I don't know the mystical implications of that. I can't tell you if CERN turned on its generators and then all of a sudden everything went wrong in 2015 and 2016 for all of us. All I know is that for me, it felt like something karmically was on its way to me. And it hit me all at once. What occurred in 2016 was a combination of deaths, multiple deaths of people in my community, psychological and some levels of physical abuse in my relationship that I had at the time. And I had just gotten out of another abusive relationship. Overwhelm that came from me trying to hold up all of the structures in my life, because I was in multiple bands, I was in multiple projects, I was working 40 hours a week as an audio engineer at this publishing house called Sounds True, where I was an audio engineer for all of these amazing spiritual teachers. And I was like, it was a great job, but I was just going through so much that I wasn't able to really like hold up with the weight of everything that was happening around me. So what happens is my close friend and bandmate, Tyler Dupre, dies. He dies suddenly. We had no idea it was going to happen. He died of a heart arrhythmia at 34 in a bathroom stall. And it hit us like a ton of bricks. And then about 2 weeks later, another friend of ours who lived in the neighborhood commits, and then another friend of ours commits. So there's multiple passing aways occurring all at the same time. And while this is happening, I'm dating somebody who is also trying to their own life in front of me in very violent ways. And so I'm trying to grieve this person, and then I have a romantic partner who has a knife and they're stabbing a car door, like trying to get at me while I'm in a car, shielding myself from them. So while I'm grieving the passing of my friend, this partner is doing incredibly violent things towards themselves in front of me with a pair of scissors. They are threatening to take their own, and they're doing it in deeply disturbing ways. And this person was trying to make it seem like I was the reason for their violence. And to this day, I know in my heart that that's not true. I know I did not deserve what I went through, especially during the time while I was grieving my friend's passing and like holding up this 40-hour-a-week job. And I know in my heart that I didn't deserve it. I know that that person, and I'll never name them, this isn't about that. I know that that person was going through some incredibly intensely difficult things, but it doesn't negate the fact that what I went through was incredibly psychologically damaging. And the fact that I was made to believe that I should be okay with it, or that it shouldn't have been a big deal, is what led me to so many problems down the line. And it wasn't until I actually acknowledged the harm and what was going on and how it was like affecting me moving forward that I was actually able to move forward. So this person is breaking doors, like breaking glass doors. She is taking a knife and car windows that I'm sitting in, trying to get away from her. She's doing incredibly traumatic things to me. She is, I'm sure she was going through a lot of pain at the time, but it doesn't mean that I was the one who was supposed to fix it or that I deserved it. That relationship culminated in me receiving a phone call where she had a pew-pew and she was threatening to use it on herself. And I couldn't do anything about it because I was at work, and that was a half hour away. And by the time I finally got to the house, it was like everyone was caring for her, but nobody understood like the damage that had on me as well. And of course, I wanted people to show up for her in that moment. But as time progressed, it seemed like I had no one truly to lean on during this time. I mean, this was a hell of a year. This was a hell of a year. In that same month, I posted something on the internet about being gay, and members of my family decided it was a good idea to get on text message and start harassing me. So I'm being harassed by my family members via text while this is happening. And then on top of it, I didn't really feel like members of my community, and this isn't a blame on them, but I felt like I didn't have a real friend through this. Like, I didn't feel like I had someone who was truly a support system for me to handle the multiple volcanoes that were going off in my life. So I leave that relationship, things start to die down, and I decide to move to LA. At this point in my life, I am so disoriented by what just happened, and I'm also not being like affirmed or validated that what I went through was fucking insane. And so I'm just trying to like get up, and I'm having this really like positive forward momentum attitude, you know? I'm working this like job with crazy hours. I am every day in a coffee shop making beats, working on my project Kitty Crimes. I'm working on beats every day. I feel so inspired. I'm like, it's cool. I got this. This is awesome. We're going to be great. It's going to be fine. Everything's going to be great. And things kept falling apart. Like, no matter how positive my attitude was during that time, things just kept feeling off. I kept feeling more and more like a shell of myself. Even though I felt really creatively inspired, it was like I wasn't really able to make new friends in LA. I didn't really feel like I had support around me, but I just wasn't in a strong enough place mentally to go seek it out and find it. I was so disoriented about the person living this human experience that I didn't know how much that year really fucked me up. So life kind of blows up on me again. I get a concussion. I go through another breakup. I'm not doing well with someone who I regarded as my best friend. Like, I feel like I have no one to turn to. So I say to myself again, like, okay, LA isn't working. I'm going to go up into the mountains of California and trim some green stuff. And that was a good healing time for me. I get up into the mountains. I'm spending my nights in the wilderness. I'm listening to good music. I'm going to a hot springs every morning. I have this sauna, this fire-powered sauna in the backyard. So it was like a nice little break. And then I tell myself, that's okay. Like, I'm going to go to Portland. Instead of going back to LA, I thought like what was going to fix my problem was just moving to a new place. So I go to Portland and the same thing happens. Like, my life blows up again. And I experienced the same pattern. And we'll talk about this in Dom Your Demons, about how if you're experiencing a pattern, like a karmic pattern recurring over and over and over again, it's something that you need to alchemically like look at and transform. But at the time, I didn't understand that. So I'm in Portland. I'm dating people again. I still have no money. lockdown happens and my life blows up again. Like, I go through another series of people treating me like shit, being abusive, trying to like withhold resources from me. The people I'm dating certainly don't feel supportive to my mental health. And it's suffice it to say that my strategy of like leaving LA and going to a new place and going to a new place, like while trimming weed was great. It was like once I got to Portland, it was just like this pattern just kept happening over and over and over again. And it took me so long to actually figure out what I needed to do. But put a pin in that and we'll get back to it. The only thing that saves me during this time, I mean, mind you, this whole time I'm like inspired, I'm making music, I still have this attitude of, no, we're gonna get up, it's gonna be fine. No, in Portland, I'm not making any friends again. And I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with these people? Don't they know that like in Denver, I was a god? Like, why can nobody see how amazing I am? I truly do not understand how I could not easily make some cool friends out here. But I think what was going on was because it was almost like people could see the wounds on my face. It was like the heartbreak was so apparent, and the fact that I was just such a shell of who I used to be, it was like so loud. More volcanoes go off, lockdown happens, and the only thing that actually saves me is that when I was working at Sounds True as an audio engineer, I was the audio engineer to record the first recordings of Damien Eccles, who's a ceremonial magician. And I remembered that. And I was like, that guy was really interesting. I am just going to pour myself into practicing ceremonial magic for 2 hours a day, every single day, and see if it can change something in my life. So I've always been a mystic, but this was my first real attempt at like using energy work to shift something in my life. And it did shift things, but it kind of shifted things. I mean, it definitely was a profound experience. So I'm living in this little shack in the back, and I decide, okay, I'm going to start doing like the banishing ritual of the pentagram. I'm going to be doing all of these rituals, and I'm just going to see what happens. It's so funny because the first week that I start doing ceremonial magic, somebody calls me out of the blue and is like, hey, I want to buy you a guitar. And I'm like, what? And they're like, yeah, just go to your closest guitar shop and I want you to buy a guitar. And I'm like, well, that was weird, but okay. And then the landlord of the property that I'm living on says, hey, you know that shack you're living in the back? I'm like, yeah. They're like, well, I want to turn it into a full apartment. So you have like a full living space in the back. Cause I was like kind of living in squalor. And they were like, yeah, I want to turn it into a full blown apartment. I'm like, this ceremonial magic thing is fucking working. And then they go, oh, also I'm going to install a sauna, a jacuzzi, and a fireplace. So while lockdown is happening, all of a sudden, like a full fireplace, backyard, outdoor bathtub, sauna, jacuzzi, and my own apartment springs up. And I'm like, wow. I was like, wow, this is incredible. But there were so many more rewards to practicing ceremonial magic, just in the sense that I like learned an ancient tradition and I really understood the mechanics of energy work. Ceremonial magic did not dom my demons. Ceremonial magic did not solve my problems. It did not take me out of the extreme lack and scarcity and almost like poverty that I was living in. But it did create this spiritual shield of protection that I could pretty intensely feel around me. I mean, one thing that learning that did for me was all of a sudden, nothing scared me. Like no negative energy at all could freak me out. I had such a strong, powerful aura that I felt like I could kind of like go into these deeper territories, and I felt so sound and strong within myself spiritually. So that was like it was really cool. I've learned since then that ceremonial magic isn't my lineage, really, mainly because it's so masculine. Like, it's so structured. And also, like, all the stuff happening with the Freemasons and the Epstein and the conspiracy theories and just like everything happening that is attached to ceremonial magic, I don't align with. I think that everything that people are demonizing around the Kabbalah, it's like atomic energy. You can take a knife and you can do something horrible with a knife, or you can carve a beautiful sculpture. It's not the energy itself or the harnessing of energy that is evil. If that were true, like the ancient Chinese doing Qigong would all of a sudden be demonic. And I don't think that that's true in any regard. But because it was like so closely affiliated with all this spooky shit that's going on in the government, I was like, I just don't want to. I just don't want to fuck around and find out. But it was like a truly enriching time for me. Okay, so I still haven't downed my demons yet. So I decide to change my name to Midas around this time. I have a bunch of very interesting paranormal experiences that are spurned by energy work that I was practicing. And then I have this feeling or indication of like, okay, I need to go back to LA. Like I kind of ran away from LA. So I go back to LA and still like I'm hopeful, but nothing seems to be moving. And I push and I push and I look for friends and I look for opportunity and I look for support, and it's like nothing I do is working. The person I was then was just as cool as the person I am now, but the person I am now is like experiencing really enriching friendships and is feeling so back in the flow of life. I know now in hindsight that the person who had not dommed their demons was like just creating these patterns over and over again, and I didn't have to take it so personally, like I wasn't lovable. And I even knew that the whole time. I was like, I'm so special. What the fuck is going on? Why do I feel alone? Why is nothing I'm doing working? And listen, before we go any further, I just want to tell you that talking about all of my failures and blown up relationships and times that I've tried and I didn't succeed and all the ways that I've fallen flat on my face, it's not a fun humiliation ritual for me to be sharing this with you. But if I am going to give you the story time of how I dom my demons, I have to tell you just how fucking blocked I was, all right? I come back to LA and it's kind of okay. You know, like there's a generally decent reception that I feel from LA, but it's still so lackluster in comparison to my former life. And I throw a dance party that has moderate success. It was a queer conceptual surrealist dance party called Space Cunt. It was pretty cool. You know, I'm kind of making friends, but they're not actually people I'm resonating with. And actually, there's this really pronounced thing that's happening now where whenever I try to think about a dream I have during this period of time in my life, there is a somatic block that comes up so strong that it feels like it has the fury of a man who hates me trying to tear a phone book through my chest. It fucking hates me. And it's like anytime I think about like I could do it, I could make it, it's like I had failed so many times and I had felt blocked so many times and I had felt like, well, the truth of it was I hadn't really like looked at my wounds, and it was just this block was like just asking me to look at the depth of my pain, which I hadn't done yet, but it was just tearing through me. So I thought I was doomed. Every step towards a dream meant that it woke up this monster inside of me that screamed the words, I hate you. And there was one moment where it just left me completely bereft and heartbroken. I was like in a bathtub for 3 days just crying. Life had truly broken my heart because I felt like life didn't want to support me anymore, that God didn't love me anymore, that I had just like fallen out of favor with the universe, and that no matter how much work I would ever do, I would always be poor and humiliated. I will say that even in all of my flop eras, I have remained cute and creative and made cool shit, and I ended up being an erotic voice on the app Quinn, and if you've ever listened to Quinn, you might recognize my voice from there. Garnered over
1.4 million
listens on the Quinn app. So even in my flop era, I was still cool in my flop era, but it was just like this reception of the Matrix is so mid compared to what I know I can achieve and what I know I can experience and what I know I can receive. And this is around the time where I discover that I'm going to create a framework for facing your shadow and making it your divine accomplice called Dom Your Demons. At this point in the story, it's like 7 years of banging my head up against the wall. I don't feel overjoyed to tell the entire world about all my failures, but the only reason that I can tell you now is because there's a turning point in this story. So I break up with another person and I am just heartbroken by life, but I'm still, even after 7 years of trying, just so fucking determined to live a good life. Like, so determined to have a good experience in life. So I'm working at this restaurant, and I joke that this restaurant is like a literal hell simulation. Nobody tipped. It was like the most rude clientele you've ever come across in your life. It was on the Hollywood Boulevard. It was so bad. It was like a service job. I was like waiting tables. And I walked into the restaurant one day to pick up my check, and I think I was going to have like a beer and smoke a cigarette and write something in my journal. And this is the day that Dom Your Demons started. It's Halloween. There's people in costumes all around me. And I get this spark or a hunch or an intuition of like, what the fuck am I going to do? And I'm writing in my journal, and I write down very definitively, I am going to write a book called Dom Your Demons. And I am going to Dom said demons. Like, I am going to figure this out. So as I'm writing it down, the craziest thing happens. I look up, and to my right, there is a man in a demon mask who's staring at me as I'm writing the word Dom Your Demons. I look up, he's staring at me, and I'm like, holy shit. And I just feel called to like get up out of my seat, and I walk towards him. And just without missing a beat, I look him in the eye, and I'm like, I want you to know that you're a good sign for me tonight. And this guy takes off his mask, and he's this like beautiful Arabic man. I don't know if he was from like Iran or Pakistan or Iraq or wherever, but he's such a pretty guy. And he's crying. He has tears in his eyes. And he's like, I needed you to tell me that. You're my good sign for the night too. And I was like, okay, there's something around this Dom Your Demons thing. I think by setting the intention, I set off the spark that actually started my real healing. It was not until I started this painstaking process that any forward momentum happened in my life. And the first thing that I started to do was two things. I got out of all toxic, negative relationships, unsafe work environments, and I had this little park in my neighborhood, and I started going to this park every day and sitting at this tree. I would just let the weight of this tree take me, but then eventually I would combine that with taking off my shoes, and I was like doing earthing and just like letting this tree take my pain basically. And so I'm sitting with this tree, I'm taking my shoes off, and then I start incorporating qigong and lymphatic circulation and nervous system regulation, and it becomes a routine. And then eventually I added some of the energy work that I learned when I was practicing ceremonial magic as well. And I came to call this routine How to Actually Relax. There's some pretty crazy before and after pictures of like before I started doing this and afterwards. That class is for sale on my website. I truly think it's the best $20 you'll ever spend if you do it every single day, multiple days in a row. If you can't get your feet on the earth, buy an earthing mat. It is a worthy investment, and How to Actually Relax is a worthy investment of your time. So if you are personally in a place where you're in the sea of your life and you need like something to take you out of the sea and put you on the shore, swear to God, dude, this class can help you get there. That's truly what worked for me. That was the first step because I just knew I couldn't heal in a crisis. And so I had to do something that was going to make my body and my nervous system a reliable container for holding the healing. It was just something instinctive in me that knew that that was the only way that I was going to like make my way out of it. So I embarked on this journey of like intense prioritization of self-care. My nervous system health, my diet, And cutting out all of these shitty people in my life was the only thing that put me in the mindset for being able to look at my shadow. So I do that for about 3 months straight. And around the 3-month mark, I start locating where the discomfort was of the past 7 years and finding when something would come up, like that really horrible phone book somatic block, that demon in my chest that was like, I hate you, whenever I would think about going towards my goals. I just would get really observant of it. And I started employing in Hermeticism what they call the principle of neutrality. I just would find myself about 1 spiritual inch behind the block, and I would let it scream, but I would let it scream without becoming reactive or dramatic about the story it was telling me. I would just send my love and what I call the energy of the inner smile, which is a traditional Chinese medicine technique, the inner smile, and I would just smile towards these things that were raging at me. And the most important tenet of Dom Your Demons that I hope to pass on to others is that you're not a victim if you truly affirm and validate the wounds that caused you harm. For me, toughing it out was sending me to hell. Just having a positive mindset, but not actually looking at the deeper emotional problems that were going on underneath, was actually fucking me up. And during this time, I also had a therapist and a spiritual mentor. I'll say something controversial, which is that the therapist was helpful, but the person who really healed themselves was me. And it wasn't until my time after the time with the therapist was over that I really started to see progress. Not because I ended with the therapist, but because I took responsibility for my own healing. But the place where the time with the therapist was really, really monumentally helpful was I just didn't know how bad it had gotten. Like when I would talk about my emotional landscape, I was just such a wreck. And I needed to see that. I actually needed to see the outcomes of the things that had happened in my life and the effect that they had on me. And I know for some of you that are listening, you're afraid that you'll just become a complete wreck if you were actually able to acknowledge just how bad some things had gotten. But once you build the right, strong container for yourself, you begin to develop a level of self-trust that allows you to get through the process relatively unscathed. And I'm going to tell you that the 2 years that I have spent in the alchemical process of doming my demons, they were not fun, but I knew they were so productive and necessary, because every time I employed this sense of neutrality towards the things that were screaming at me, and I just loved into them, and I will spend many more episodes getting more in depth about the actual energy work and the mechanics behind it. But all you need to know right now is if you are fighting with yourself, all you got to do is exit the sea of crisis, find any way to get out of substance abuse, toxic relationships that are beyond extent of repair, intense grief, find the assistance of a counselor or a mentor or community. Make sure that you're not doing it alone so that you don't get disoriented in the process of getting out of the sea. And once you're on the shore, prioritize the health of your nervous system and the health of your physical body. Start moving it, start developing a somatic relationship with it. My biggest advice to you is take your shoes off as much as possible and put your feet on the earth to orient yourself. It's so healing in ways that I can't verbalize. You're just going to have to take my word on it. But from there, then you can start to have a trustworthy foundation of smiling into these things, affirming them, and watching the process of alchemy occur through that affirming without becoming the pain, without becoming the suffering. So listen, kid, I don't want to waste your time, okay? All I can tell you is that through the synthesis of esoteric study, applied energy work, lived experience, blood, sweat, and tears, something has occurred and shifted in my life by spending 2 years of just devoutly looking at the mechanics of the shadow and finding an embodied way to truly take the darkest parts of me, alchemize them, and turn them into what I call a divine accomplice. And what that means is you don't kick your shadow out and tell it to leave and then you forget it ever happened. Everything that you learn through this process of alchemy transforms your life so you become a whole, more integrated person. Okay? One thing I didn't tell you about is that for the last 10 years, I've been giving intuitive readings, but over the last 2 years, since I've done this process of Dom Your Demons, something has become a little bit more potent about these intuitive readings. So earlier in this video, when I was having technical difficulties, I actually took a moment, I pulled in the energy of this collective that's watching this video, and I pulled a card for you. And I want you to know that if you ever feel called to do an intuitive reading with me, my readings are available on the website, and the card that I pulled for us today, it's not the sexiest card, okay? It's the Five of Wands. But I think that it's perfect for this collective because if you're watching this and you resonate with what it's like to have a block and not know what to do about it, the Five of Wands indicates a battle of wits, but in the context of this card for today, I would call it a battle of wits against yourself. You are in an argument with yourself. And there's no mistake if you're watching this. I want you to know that these shadows do not have power over you. You are competent enough to just build the right container with the right structure to be able to apply neutrality and competence towards the darkest parts of yourself, and it will reward you in dividends. This card suggests that you should hold fast, persevere, and you're not going to fucking give up yet. Not if you're listening to this channel, you're not giving up yet. You're fucking braver than that. And no matter what these voices try to do, like they try to force you into submission, what I want you to know is that true dominance is self-control. And self-control, I've learned, starts with self-observation. Just the ability to observe yourself with neutrality aids in this process of gaining dominance over your own impulses, over your own fears, over your own darkness. And eventually the shadow will begin to trust you because it sees that the person observing this difficulty has the ability to basically hold all of it without freaking out. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. If it's given you any value, would you hit the like button and subscribe to this channel? And if you feel called to get a reading, my readings are on the website. Take the How to Actually Relax class if you're looking to get out of the sea of your life and step onto the shore. My name is Midas MSL, and I can't wait to see what we create together. So stay freaky, and I'll see you in the next one.